with JMU Hall of Famer and someone who knows a hell of a lot about taking it to the house.
Joyce breaks a tackle and goes in for a touchdown. Another spectacular run by Delvin Joyce.
Delvin Joyce brings his unique perspective to the podcast to break down all things he's seeing about JMU football, with a little help from EPA King Jack Fitzpatrick and Bennett Conlin.
Here he goes. He's going to try to beat the punter. He does. He's gone. And that is a touchdown.
Welcome into To the House.
Getting turned back and forth. Oh, he broke his ankles. Now he's got an entourage. And he's got a touchdown.
Now, here's Delvin Joyce with Jack Fitzpatrick and Bennett Conlin.
What's going on, JMU Nation? Welcome to another episode of To the House. It is your host, Delvin Joyce, the People's Choice. I am joined by my guy, my good friend, Bennett Conlin, a.k.a. BCZ. Bennett, you haven't been here since, episode 2 or 3 of To the House? What's happening?
It's been a while. I'm excited to be back on.
Man, I am excited to have you back on. I have been listening very intently to JMU Sports News. And so I have heard the progression of Bennett Conlin over the last 10 weeks of this season. So it's good to have you back onto the house, man. So you excited about cooking with me tonight? I
am. It's a good one. Coming off a bye, excited to get back to football. But it was a much needed bye, I think, for the team, but then also, for the fans. A nice chance to cool off maybe a little bit.
BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting. From the earliest odds to in-game live betting, BetOnline provides you with all the action and the ability to watch the games as they happen. With the largest selection of odds on everything from football, NBA, NHL to entertainment and political props. Head to BetOnline today to get in on the action with America's most trusted site for online wagering. BetOnline, the game starts here. Be sure to subscribe to the JMU Sports News Network so you never miss an episode. We are your exclusive home for To the House with JMU Hall of Famer Delvin Joyce and the JMU Sports News Podcast with Jack Fitzpatrick and Bennett Conlin. New episodes of To the House drop every Monday, and new episodes of the JMU Sports News Podcast drop in the middle of every week. Be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts and YouTube so you never miss an episode.
Man, it was a great buy for me, and I'm going to tell you why in a second. But I do have a couple of opening thoughts, and the first thing, obviously, to your point, we're coming off a bye, and really the big question as we were all in this bye week is, can this team, can they figure it out? Can they somehow come back and run the table? 4 more weeks, 4 games left. Can they come back and run the table? And so that is the big question that we've all been asking. I've been asking, and, we'll talk about the Sun Belt and maybe some of their opportunity to do that. Before I get into that, man, I mean, the big news this week was the top 25 NCAA coaches poll. Did you see that? What was the big news from the coaches poll this week?
JMU's still showing up in the receiving vote section.
JMU, I thought you were going to say Indiana in the top 10, but no. That notwithstanding, it was the fact that JMU received 1 vote in the coaches poll. Now, Bennett, I got to ask you, what are the odds that 1 vote? who could have cast that 1 vote for James Madison football this past week?
It's got to be either Bob Chesney or you've got Mac Brown trying to save his job for another year or something at UNC.
You know what? I had not considered that it could be Mac Brown. That would be like next level, like Kaiser Sose thoughtfulness. Like if Mac Brown is like, yo, if JMU cracks into the top 25, we finish the year bowl eligible, I got a job for another year. But I gotta say, I think it's Ches, man.
Sure.
I think Ches is voting for himself, man. And you know what? I gotta say, man, I love it. Like I can tell you right now that if Bob Chesney cast that vote for James Madison in the top 25 poll, I'm riding with that dude forever. Like he is my guy forever. The fact that your coach would vote for himself in the top 25 in a 6-2 season when we lost to 2 teams, in the Sun Belt, I love that. How do you feel about that?
I like it. It's sort of that like level of either delusion or just like self-confidence that I kind of want out of a head coach. So I like that. I also like the idea that he thinks the team is a top 25 team,
Yeah.
which could have some positive vibes going in the last 4 games if he thinks that they've got that potential still left in them.
Yeah, so do I. And for what it's worth, if this team finishes 10-2 in the Sun Belt and maybe gets a little help from Georgia Southern, South Al let us down
That
this
was
week.
tough.
But if they get a little help from Georgia Southern loses 2 out of 3, and JMU somehow finds its way into the Sun Belt Championship, faces Louisiana, who it looks like it's probably going to be out of the West, and wins that game, you'd be hard-pressed to tell me this is not a top 25 team. So go off, Bob Chesney. I love that. Vote for yourself. In fact, if I had a vote, and they don't give to the house host a vote in the top 25 poll, but if they did, I would vote for James Madison. Before we get into our talk about the Sun Belt, though, I also have to talk about the most incredible football play that I saw in my entire life. And you know the play I'm talking about. I mean, the Saquon Barkley 14-yard catch. I know this is to the house, and we're supposed to be talking about college football. I don't even watch NFL football. Like, in fact, on Sundays, I actually watch college football. I watch all the games that I missed on demand on Sunday. But I happened to see the Saquon Barkley 14-yard catch. And the spin move by itself was bananas.
Very good. Yeah.
I mean, the spin move by itself was ridiculous. But the backwards jump over the guy. I mean, I've been watching football for 46 years. Yes, I was watching as a baby, as an infant. I have never, ever seen a play like that in my entire life. And I grew up with Barry Sanders. What do you think? Well, I mean, is that the play of the century?
I've never seen anyone try it. I've never thought about it. Anyone trying it. Yeah, like a backwards hurdle is pretty much unheard of. It's hard enough and risky enough to take a hurdle on a normal play. To do it with, your head turned the other way is pretty absurd.
Absurd. And he got like 5 more yards because of that. And you said you've never seen anyone try it. You know who's trying it today and for the next week? Every single kid playing Little League and high school football, they are doing the Saquon Barkley backwards hurdle right now. They're getting their defender friends to help them choreograph it, to do it for social media. It reminded me of when Michael Jordan, and now I'm taking it back because I'm an old guy, but when they were playing the Lakers in the NBA Finals, the first game, and Michael went down the middle of the lane, he went up with his right hand, he switched over to his left hand and made a layup. At the time, It was like the most incredible thing we had ever seen. And I just remember literally the next day, we all went outside and all we were doing was switching hands, trying to make that shot. So, man, I just had to take a second to talk about Saquon, recognize his greatness, and also recognize the fact that my New York Giants just cannot hang on to talent.
No.
I mean, if you're a talented player, the Giants are going to, love you and leave you. So, but Bennett, let's talk about the Sun Belt Conference. And, I got to say, this next 4 weeks is exactly why we joined the Sun Belt, because we wanted every week to actually mean something. And these next 4 games are paramount. Even this Georgia State game means something. I think Jack called it a transitive win. Like, if we can win this game, we by virtue beat Alabama this year, because Georgia State beat Vandy beat Alabama. Anyway, I don't believe in any of that, but I think it's still kind of a cool thing to talk about. But we've got Old Dominion after this Georgia State game. And Bennett, the team can't look ahead, but we certainly can. We got Old Dominion after that. It is an in-state rival, and it is a nationally televised game on ESPNU. Did you see that was recently announced?
Yes.
And are you excited about that?
I am. That's a good one. I love some of these home games on ESPN Plus because we get to hear your voice more. But the road games, give me national TV every day.
Yeah, I love it, man. And by the way, I think that is a nationally televised game because of the JMU brand, because James Madison receives votes in the coaches poll and they are 6-2. Old Dominion is 4-5, right? So I don't necessarily know that ESPNU is like, we got to go to Norfolk, Virginia to see Old Dominion play, right? So that is all JMU. Then we got App State. And I'm telling you, App State is a huge game. I don't care what their record is. They are absolutely a rival. Their fans feel the exact same way about us as we feel about them. I'm not even allowing my daughter, who is 18 years old and applying to colleges. The one college in North Carolina she's not allowed to apply to is Appalachian State. I refuse to send my money to Boone unless it is for Hurricane Helene relief. And I mean it. And so she can go to community college. She's just not allowed to go to App State, period. And then, of course, we have the Marshall game to end the season. That Marshall game is going to be huge. Yeah. Obviously, Marshall should have beat Georgia Southern. They actually could be in the driver's seat in the Sun Belt East race, if not for that come from behind victory for Georgia Southern. So really looking forward to these next 4 wins. Bennett, which of those 4 games, though, concerns you the most?
I think it might be App State now, because they seem to do this thing every year with Sean Clark, or at least the last couple, where he maybe struggles out of the gate. Fans are putting him on the hot seat, and then they just sort of stack wins late in the year, just like last year where they started really slow. They're stacking wins. They've won 2 in a row. They're 4-4. I don't know. Scary to go to Boone. That's a tough place to play, a good football team. So I think those 2 road games back to back at ODU and at App State are both going to be tough. But like you were saying, this is why JMU joined the Sun Belt. These are going to be great games. I'm looking forward to the last 4.
I love it, man. I mean, I love it. I'm so excited about it. And to your point, I mean, App State, of course, they are trying to get bowl eligible. They only need to win 2 of their last 4 to do that. But if they can finish the year like a 8-4 kind of season, so you better believe Sean Clark is trying to do that, because he is absolutely on the hot seat. But they seem to get hot at the right moment. Joey Aguilar is playing lights out right now. And they've got this receiver, Caden Robinson, who, I mean, that dude is easily the best in the Sun Belt, except that he just scored his first touchdown this past week. I have no idea how he just scored his first touchdown, but the dude is a monster, man. That dude is a player. But the Sun Belt is a highly competitive league, and that's one of the things that we love about it. Now, you said the bye week came at a great time for the players. It gave them an opportunity to get a break, but it also gave us as fans an opportunity to get a break. And you know what I did with that break? I watched college football from start to finish, sun up to sundown, both days. Again, I watched the games that I missed on Saturday. I watched them on Sunday. And one of the things that, I've always said, I hate social media. I try to stay off social media as much as possible, because I always see people say, crazy things. And one of the themes that I'm seeing is it's just a lot of chance for, we should bench AB3. We got to get a new quarterback. And I'm like, man, what are we watching the same game? And so I wanted to watch college football this week to see who this magical, mythical quarterback performance is that we want to see come in and replace our guy, Alonzo Barnett III. By the way, a guy who has put up, I think, really good numbers this year. A guy who has, gotten us some really signature wins, a Power 4 win over a Chapel Hill team who, by the way, is peaking right now, will probably end the season with that 7 wins that I talked about 5 weeks ago when we beat them. And if you look at Barnett right now, through 8 games, he's got 1,800 yards passing. He's thrown 18 touchdown passes and only 2 interceptions. Now, I know he's gotten sacked 24 times, and I would give him at least half of those sacks are on him. But you got to put the other half of the sacks on someone else. And again, I think he's played pretty well. So I looked up and down the Sun Belt, Bennett. I watched other teams play this week to see, and again, I'm only going to compare this to the Sun Belt, but I watched a lot of football. Penn State, Ohio State. I watched these quarterbacks, kind of pedestrian, mediocre numbers, But if we look at just the Sun Belt, who do we want to replace AB3 with? Jordan McLeod? Maybe. I don't know. Texas State quarterback. He's got 1,979 yards. He's thrown 20 touchdowns, but 7 interceptions, and his team is 4-4. I don't think so, right? I mean, he's played well. What do you think? J Mac?
I don't think you're doing it with McLeod either. And he's kind of not come up for Texas State in some of those big moments when they've hoped that he would. Like they only scored 14 in a loss to ODU, only scored 17 in a loss to Louisiana. Sam Houston game, they scored 39 in a 40-39 loss, but like they kind of stuck there for a while late in the game and weren't putting up points. I don't think you're trading AB3 for anyone, especially as a redshirt sophomore.
Yeah.
I think fans definitely need to take a deep breath and legitimately watch other group of 5 or other games when they have a chance, because some of the quarterback play is really rough.
We actually have a treasure in this guy who is a redshirt sophomore. And, I looked at Marshall. Marshall's played 3 quarterbacks this year. They've combined to throw for less yards than AB3, less touchdowns than AB3, and more interceptions than AB3. Let's talk about Troy. Same thing. Less yards. They play 3 quarterbacks, less yards, less touchdowns, more interceptions. Same with Southern Miss, right? Less yards, less touchdowns, more interceptions. Now, if we look at Arkansas State actually has a pretty good player in Jalen Rayner. He's also a sophomore, so he and AB3 are the same class. I think this kid is actually a true sophomore. And ironically, he's from Kernersville, North Carolina, which is not too far from Greensboro, North Carolina, where AB3 is from. They probably played against each other in high school. But Jalen Rayner's thrown for 1867, 7 touchdowns and 6 interceptions. So not exactly lighting it up, but a pretty good season for a young quarterback. Now, of course, we saw J.C. French, the quarterback from Georgia Southern, right? He's got 1988 yards, 14 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. All of these guys, their touchdown to interception ratio is nowhere near AB3. Now, the guy that I would say has done pretty well overall is this guy Woodridge. I don't know if you've seen Louisiana play. Have you seen this kid play?
He's nice. He's a pretty solid player for them.
He's a solid player. I mean, I think a great decision maker. He's got 2,037 yards. He's thrown for 16 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. But guess what? He's also a super duper senior. Like this dude has been in college for 7. This is his 7th college football season. I mean, he has to get his own car insurance at this point. Like I can't understand. He played 4 years at Fresno State, and now he's had 3 seasons at Louisiana. So, I mean, if we want to compare AB3, a guy who's been in college for three years and had 8 starts, to a kid that's been in a grown man who's been in college for 7 years, I don't know, but I wouldn't trade him for that guy either. Georgia State, they've played 2 quarterbacks, benched their starter. The projected Sun Belt Play of the Year, we just talked about him, Bennett, Joey Aguilar. Now, Joey's had a really good season, thrown for 2,270 yards. He's thrown 18 touchdowns, so he actually matches AB3 on the actual touchdowns. You know the flip side of that?
He's thrown a lot of picks.
he's going to throw some picks now. He's thrown 10 interceptions. And oh, by the way, they're 4-4. And of course, he has more passing yards because he's thrown the ball 60 more times, right? And then I guess the last one that I would talk about is this kid, Gio Lopez. Now, I finally had a chance to really watch him play because he's fun to watch. Like, I really like his game. I watched him play against Georgia Southern. In fact, I think they beat Georgia Southern if he doesn't get hurt late in that game. Right. I mean, and his backup came in and did pretty well, but it was unfortunate to see that he went out. He's got 1,900 yards passing, 14 touchdowns, only 2 interceptions, still not the same amount of touchdown passes as AB3. But where I think Gio Lopez is dangerous is he's got, almost 400 rushing yards, 4 touchdowns. Now, Barnett has 300 rushing yards. We didn't talk about that, and 5 rushing touchdowns. And Gio Lopez actually has 1 extra game. And by the way, South Al is 4-5. So I don't know that I would trade him there either. Right now, the one guy that's lighting it up right now that we're going to see in a couple of weeks is this kid, Colton Joseph. I think he's a freshman, or is he a sophomore? He's a freshman, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a freshman, but I think he's a redshirt freshman. So he's been in college for 2 years. He's playing pretty well. He's putting up some big numbers. But here's the thing you have to remember. He's only made like 2 or 3 starts, and teams have not had a chance to evaluate him and game plan for him. So you pop in, you take everybody by surprise, and then your ability to adjust as teams adjust to your game, that's what's going to make you a winner. So I mean, I know it's a little earlier in this episode. Damn, what's your name? Bennett. I know it's a little early in the episode, Bennett, because it's a little late tonight, so I got totally blanked on your name. But here's the thing: it's early in the episode for this, but anybody that wants to bench AB3, what you talking about, Willis? Like, I know we're not there yet, but what you talking about, Willis? That's crazy talk. Give the guy some time, let him cook. What are you thinking? Because I hear you on the Sports News podcast. I feel like you were like, let AB3 cook, but what are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's I can't believe we're still talking about the benching AB3. Like, the fans are still on that point, but some of them are. I'm surprised that they are. He hasn't played perfectly the last couple of weeks. I also think the pass blocking has been worse the last couple of weeks. And at times this year, the receivers have let him down. I think they have 19 drops this year. The receivers last year for JMU had 16 the entire season.
Wow.
So there's more drops this year. The pass protection the last few weeks hasn't been as good. I mean, he looked like he was hobbled maybe the last couple games slightly based on sort of how he was wrapping his ankles and things like that. So I think the bye week's going to help him because they can scheme some stuff up for him. He can get a little bit healthier because he does run a lot. So I imagine he's taken some bruises. He's taken some tough hits this year to his upper body too. So I think a week of rest, a week of working on some stuff schematically, he's going to be fine. But I've seen people talking about bringing Dylan Morrison, which I don't know that gives you a better chance of winning. I've heard a few calls for JC Evans because then you could develop a young quarterback. And I'm like, Alonzo's a young quarterback. You've got the young quarterback who helped put up 70 points against UNC. Why not develop that guy?
Yeah.
So I like sticking with him and letting him just grow and develop the rest of the season. And then in year 2 with Bob Chesney and company, I think he'll be even more comfortable. So I like what he's done this year. It hasn't been perfect, but yeah, you look around the rest of the group of 5, the rest of the Sun Belt, nobody's perfect. Even Jordan McLeod, who's played, 6 seasons of college football now or whatever it is.
Yeah. Exactly. And you made so many great points. The guy is going to be fine. I don't want to make too much of this because I do believe that it's a minority of people who are actually calling for that. And that minority of people who are calling for that is like the easiest take, right?
Yeah.
When you look at college football, it's like, oh man, the coaching sucks. Like that's the easy take. Or our quarterback sucks. We need a new quarterback. Or the third one is the refs suck, right? So it's like the 3 amateur takes. So I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on that, but I hope everybody got an opportunity during this bye week to look across the landscape of college football to see how fortunate we actually are. Because right now we are 6-2. That is the second best record in the Sun Belt overall, right? Even the team that's ahead of us in the Sun Belt East is 5. What are they? 5-3, Georgia Southern, right?
Maybe 6-3 now, but they've got 3 losses. Yeah.
Yeah, they got 3 losses, right? So the only team that the only 1-loss team in the entire Sun Belt is Louisiana. Yeah. And Louisiana's 1 loss was actually a pretty good loss to a really good Tulane team. So I do think Louisiana is sort of rising as the cream of the crop. And so, as we think about where this team's going to land, this James Madison team coming out of this bye week, a couple of things that we got to figure out. You said it. I mean, I just believe that we got to figure out the offense. There's something that's not clicking there. And to your point, I think a lot of it revolves around some of these protection issues. We have to protect AB3. It is amazing the different quarterback he is when he has a clean pocket versus a dirty pocket. And so if we can keep him with a clean pocket, oh, sorry, that's my alarm to charge my car. But yeah, if we could keep him with a clean pocket, I mean, this guy's going to torch teams. And so I think there are a couple of things that we got to figure out. Now, what I like about Chesney is he talks about how the bye week is an opportunity for them to focus on themselves. Right. So they take 1 week to focus on themselves, and then they take the next week to focus on the opponent. And one of the things that I hope they focused on, one of the things that I would like to see Dean Kennedy go into the lab and cook up is a quicker passing game.
Yeah.
Where I think we've gotten in trouble is, we want to throw the ball downfield. Those plays take a lot longer to develop. We've got some big time playmakers that can take the top off of defenses like Amarion Dollison, Cam Ross, these guys, but we don't have enough time right now in pass pro to make that happen, especially when teams bring pressure. So I hope we are dialing up some quicker passing game, some quicker passing schemes. So no more 5 to 7 step drops. Let's go quick. Let's go quick screens, get the ball to our tight ends and our slot guy, Yamir Knight. So I guess thoughts for you around, how we can sort of speed up this passing game, number one. And I guess number two, we got some injuries on the offensive line. Maybe some of those folks coming back will help to solve some of those protection issues. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, maybe Carter Sweezy coming back at left guard. We'll see. Bob Chesney gave a little bit of a nothing answer in his Monday press conference, but to be expected, he says they're kind of going with that rehab as it goes, and hopefully he'll be back soon. That would certainly help. Tyshawn Wyatt, they've teased that he could come back for these last few games, so maybe there's something there. But yeah, the quick passing game would be good. I think anything with Petaway, whether it's a screen or halfback angle routes, anything with him would get me excited, man. I love that guy in the passing game. So fingers crossed they get him going. But yeah, I agree that I feel like the Charlotte game and the UNC game gave them sort of this idea that our identity is deep shots because they were hitting them at a great level. And I feel like they've sort of stuck with that, maybe to their detriment at times where they're trying to hit those explosives. But when a blitz is coming, they don't have time to set it up. So yeah, give me those Taylor Thompson, George Petaway. Give me the quick ones. Jack's not here, but I got to shout out Taylor Thompson. So yeah, give him the ball.
Yeah, I got to shout out Taylor Thompson too, because you know why? Here's the other part of that. When you go quick like that, you can get these teams out of pressure, right? So if I'm bringing pressure, but every time I bring pressure, you hit me quick with either a screenplay or some sort of 3-step drop slant, and you burn me a couple of times, I'm going to get out of the pressure because now I got to protect that. And that's one of the things that if you watch that Coastal Carolina game, Coastal Carolina tried their best to bring pressure in that first half. But what we did effectively is we hit them so quick with so many big explosive plays that they had to come out of that pressure. And so they couldn't bring that pressure. And that's why it was sort of a nothing game in the second half because there's just nothing to do, right? We'd already scored the points. And so it was just an interesting way to see that develop. And I think that will be a key for us moving forward. Would love to see more screens to the running backs and the tight ends. I know we have the quick screens to the receivers. Would like to see more of that to the running backs. I also think we got to build on the success of this running game that we showed last week. Right, Petaway is coming off a career high, and he's averaging over 6 yards a carry. And he got like 16 carries in the last game as well. So would love to see him get more touches. I don't want to necessarily see him be an Amarion Hampton 32 carry a game type of player. But certainly he's a guy that should put his hands on the ball 20 times a game, whether it's in the backfield or catching the ball out of the backfield, because he's due for a huge explosive. He's had some big plays, but he's due for like that 80-yarder spin move, jump over a guy backwards type of play. You know what I'm talking about?
We'll see if he can break it out. Yeah, the Saquon hurdle.
It's funny, man. I was looking at some comments on the Saquon play. Someone was like, yo, bro hit all the buttons like on a video game. And I could just relate because I'm trying to my best. I bought College Football 25. I went out and bought an Xbox. Haven't owned the system in God knows how long. And also bought College Football 25, and I have no idea what I'm doing. So when he said bro hit all the buttons, I know exactly what he's talking about because that's how I play the game. I'd also like to see coming out of this bye week. Obviously, we had the injury to Tyler Purdy. I would love to see a package for your boy Joby Mallory. Yeah,
there it is.
Yeah, I got your "We Want Joby" shirts going, but yeah, I mean, listen. First off, I mean, the dude had a very successful career at Portland State.
Yeah,
he's obviously an effective running back. Every time he gets in, he flashes for me anyway. And I don't know if that's because he's running, he's getting garbage time and he's running against backups. But who cares? He's got backups blocking for him. right? That's what I always said, right? Like people were like, "Oh man, you look good, but you were playing garbage time." Because I told you I had the 30-30-30 rule. Have I ever explained this to you?
Yep.
Yeah. So we either had to be up by 30, down by 30, or there was only 30 seconds left for me to go in the game at running back, right? But people would be like, "Oh, you look good, but you're going against the twos." I'm like, "Bro, I got the twos blocking for me." So what are you saying here? So anyway, so Joby, I think, looks really good, but I think specifically we need a short yardage package for Joby because Tyler was our short yardage back. And you can't tell me that Joby Mallory can't at least take a handoff and take it, 2 or 3 yards to pick up some short yardage. Because we don't run the ball on 3rd and 3. I think we broke that tendency once. We ran the ball on a 3rd and 4, and we didn't get it, but we ran it with Tyler Purdy. And I was like, wow, we actually ran the ball on 3rd and 4. That was interesting. We broke a tendency. But I think Joby Mallory is the type of running back that can pick up a 3rd and 4. So are you excited about seeing more Joby Mallory?
I am excited about more Mallory. I'm not excited about the way it happened with Purdy. That's a bummer.
Yeah.
But very excited about Mallory having a chance to be the short yardage guy. And yeah, this would be a cool game for JMU to break some tendencies, right? Some quick game passing, putting Mallory in, leaning on those running backs from the start of the game. A tendency breaking game, I think, would be sort of everything the offense needs to get back on track.
Heck yeah. No, I could not agree more. And, when I look at Joey Mallory too, I think the other opportunity for him is in obvious passing downs. I think he would be amazing to have in pass protection.
Yeah.
So, we talk about some of those pass protection challenges we're having. The dude is built like an offensive lineman. So let's put him in the backfield and if I'm a blitzing linebacker or I'm a blitzing DB, I'm thinking twice before I run into that guy full speed, right? I'm just saying. Now, you talked about breaking tendencies. I also think that, for our defense, I think it's an opportunity for us to break a couple of tendencies because I think at this point in the season, teams are starting to figure us out a little bit. You see how Georgia Southern was able to kind of drive the ball up and down the field against us. And even Southern Miss had some success driving the ball against us at times. I mean, they had a couple of long drives where they just kind of just ho-hum down the field. And so I think this is an opportunity for our defense to maybe add a few new things, maybe add a few new wrinkles that will set up some opportunities in, I think, the last 3 games of the season after this Georgia State game. But obviously the defense has played well. I think it's an opportunity for them to build on what they've started. But also maybe dial up some more pressure. I think that is the key. I think Lyle Hemphill wants to be as aggressive as possible. And, I think he can put a package in that's going to help us to do that because I think that's going to be key coming down the stretch because I don't know that we can get off the field otherwise. So you talked about getting guys healthy. Again, it sounds like Sweezy may not be back. I don't know. You're right. I mean, I listened to that press conference as well. I was hoping to hear more optimism, but that might just be the Kaiser Sose in him. We also, Tyshawn Wyatt, like he could come back for these last 4 games and then still redshirt and then play in the Sun Belt Championship and then play in a bowl game.
Yes.
So what if, I'm just like, how cool would it be if coming out the tunnel next week or this coming week against Georgia State, Tyshawn plays like the last 4 games? Like that would be insane.
Yeah. It would be such a huge lift for the offensive line just to have him as a guy who could rotate in. And it sounded like that's what he wants to do. He wants to have the eligibility next year, but he also has been, practicing and preparing as if he's going to play this year. So we'll see if they actually pull the trigger on it. But yeah, that'd be incredible if he gives them just this all conference, tackle / guard if they want to make guard for the last 4 weeks.
That would be huge, man. Listen, we could absolutely use that guy. It's going to take him a while to kind of get back into game shape. You can't really duplicate playing a full game. So I couldn't see him coming back this week and playing a full game. But certainly by, Old Dominion App State, he should be pretty well game conditioned. Also excited to see Noe Ruelas back kicking the ball. That would be huge. Also, where's Logan Cowell? I mean,
Yeah.
you think? I mean, I think he had like a lacerated thigh or something, or a leg injury.
Yeah.
Kind of a weird injury, but hopefully he's back. And I just think overall that bye is going to give the players an opportunity to get fresh. And we joke about this, but our 2 bye weeks. If I could pick the week that we have a bye for the rest of every season, it would be bye week after the second game, right? So you look at those first 2 games as like a preseason, you take a bye week, right? And then you go into the regular season. Money. And then you play 4 games, and then you have a bye week, and then you finish out the last part of the season. I think that is perfect. So really excited about that.
It's great timing. Yeah, it seems like the perfect time for a buys both weeks. And I think for fans, the reason to be like really excited is they came out of the first bye like they were the best team in the country.
Yeah.
So if they can look anything like they did after that first bye, the chance of them going 10-2 or going on a late season push here is certainly very much on the table.
Yeah, I mean, they came out of the bye week and almost legit pushed Mac Brown into retirement. Like,
yeah, he was asking guys in the locker room if he should call it quits. That's how well they came out of the bye.
yeah. And by the way, I think Mac Brown is like such a gentleman, man. I actually, I didn't really know much about him because I only watched FCS football. I couldn't care less about, Texas and all that. I don't know those people. And so just in preparing for this show and doing some Mac Brown research, I really, really like that guy. So
He's a good dude.
He seems like he cares about his players, man, which is all I care about. But so let's talk about Georgia State. So obviously Georgia State's coming in. I also think that this is a team, much like Southern Miss, that is probably better than their record. And when you look at their record, they are 2-6 at this point. But and those 2 wins are against an FCS opponent, UT Chattanooga. But then the other win is against Vanderbilt, which is right now in the top 25. I mean, so when you think about this Georgia State team, I know the record says 2-6, push over. We should come in and roll over this team. There is nothing guaranteed about this. They have some talent on this team. And again, they beat a very good Vanderbilt team. At the time, right, when they beat that Vanderbilt team, we were like, okay, so what? It's Vanderbilt. But then Vanderbilt went out and beat number 1 Alabama. They also only lost to number 5 Texas by 3, but then only beat Ball State by 10. Like that Vanderbilt team is so weird, man. I think they play down to their competition, right?
Yeah.
I think there's a little bit of that because that game against Ball State was tied going into the 4th quarter, and we beat the brakes off of Ball State. So, right. Yeah, very interesting. But obviously, Georgia State is led by their new head coach, Del McGee. He was a Georgia assistant for a number of years. And, this guy, Del McGee, I think is a fantastic recruiter. Mm-hmm. He's one of those coaches that, we better beat him now because once he has a full recruiting cycle, he's going to be trouble. He's going to create a lot of chaos for teams in the Sun Belt at Georgia State. Because I don't know how did you know how Sean Elliott left Georgia State, the former head coach? Yeah,
that was a tough exit.
Yeah, that was brutal, man. I mean, he left in like February or March.
Yeah, it was late.
Yeah, it was late. So no opportunity for Del McGee when he came in to get active in the portal. No opportunity really for him to attract some transfers. And so, somebody said that Chesney put this team together with duct tape and barbed wire. I think that's kind of what Del McGee has done with this Georgia State team. And so for him to get that signature win over Vanderbilt, I think was amazing. Now, have you watched any Georgia State film?
I've watched a little bit.
Okay. So overall thoughts on them. Are you impressed? Are you like whatever? Because I know you keep it real. I mean, you are the king of keeping it real, Bennett Conlin.
I watched him play the Marshall game. I watched a decent amount. I think that was a weeknight game. So they ended up losing by 15. Wasn't totally impressed by a lot of the things they were doing, but was impressed by how they didn't quit. Like they seemed like a team that could have folded earlier this year, knowing sort of what happened with the coaching exit and the tough start to the season. but they seem like they do compete at a pretty high level throughout, which I think is kind of true with some of the losses they've had of late. App
Yeah.
State only by 7, UConn only by 7, ODU only by 7. They've had a few that like I assumed they might get stomped by some of these teams, and they kind of lingered around longer than I thought they would.
Yeah, we're gonna have our hands full. I mean, I'm telling you, this is not a pushover opponent. They got 6 losses, but several of those losses have been one possession losses. And you got a new nickname. You are now Bennett Keep It Real Conlin. I love, I
We
love
love that.
alliteration. So you are Bennett Keep It Real Conlin from here on out. But when I look at this team, so first off, they made a QB change not too long ago. So they had this kid Valau, who is a junior. He's actually Canadian. A lot of quarterbacks come to the U.S. from Canada to play quarterback in U.S. colleges, which is interesting. And then they made the change from him to this kid Gibson, Zach Gibson. And I think with Gibson, they felt like he just gave them a better opportunity to win because he is he's a mobile quarterback. Like he can throw the ball and he can run the ball. And I guess they felt like he gave them that opportunity. So, by the way, both of these guys are multiple transfer quarterbacks. Valau went to Penn State and then transferred to Pitt and then ended up at Georgia State. And then Zach Gibson went from Akron to Georgia Tech to now Georgia State. Unfortunately, I think that's going to become the norm in college football. Which also, I know, the opposite end of the spectrum, Bennett, is, people are simultaneously like, we should bench AB3, and then there's other people that are like, oh my God, hopefully AB3 doesn't enter the portal and go somewhere else, right? And when I look at college football, especially at that quarterback position, like going into the portal, when you have a starting job at a good program, going into the portal is risky business. It's risky business. I mean, you're seeing these transfer quarterbacks get beat out all over the place. And so I think, I think number one, I think AB3 really loves James Madison. But secondly, I think he, that's a risky game. It's interesting, though. I watched a lot of film on Georgia State as I prepare because I'm also doing the broadcast on ESPN Plus this week. Bennett. But Bilal wasn't necessarily playing poorly. I mean, he threw a couple of picks and maybe lost a fumble, threw some picks in, some big games that really cost him. But I think, again, it was that spark that I think Gibson can give them. And they'll even line Gibson up and run the wildcat at times. So what I do like about their offense, though, they got some good running backs. As you know, Dell McGee, the head coach now, was the running backs coach at Georgia. And he's coached a bunch of NFL dudes, like a long line of Georgia running backs who are playing in the NFL. So their starting running back right now is a guy named Freddie Brock, and he's a hard-nosed runner. He transferred from Maine, right? FCS Maine. Again, another theme that we're going to see. The best FCS players come to the group of 5. The best group of 5 players go to the P4. And then the best P4 players go to the NFL, I guess. But, he's a redshirt junior. He's got 575 yards on the season. He's averaging right at 6 yards a carry. And he is a pretty explosive dude that they use also in the screen game. And he can make some plays. The other guy is a kid named Michael Dukes. I love his name because he should be playing at James Madison with a last name like Dukes. But he seems like to be more of their third down back. He's averaging about 6.6 yards per carry, but he's actually third on the team in receptions. He's caught 29 passes. So he's the guy that they're going to look to do a lot. Now, the real playmaker on this team, Bennett, if you've watched any of their film, is Ted Hurst. This dude is a beast.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a monster, man. He's like, I'm going to go up and moss people. He came from Valdosta State, a Division II transfer, and he's kind of a matchup nightmare for us because they're going to throw the ball to him whether he's open or not. They're just going to throw it up and let him go make a play, and the guy typically makes a play. In fact, he's got 36 catches for 597 yards and 7 touchdowns. And then lastly, and then I'm going to let you get in here and just talk a little bit about these guys from your perspective. But their tight end, they get that guy very much involved in their offense. Dorian Fleming, he's from Henrico, Virginia. I'm like, how do we let this kid get out of Richmond? Right? He's supposed to be at James Madison. Why is he all the way down at Georgia State? But anyway, he's caught 35 passes for 351 yards, and he is their second leading receiver, and he has 2 touchdowns. So again, they spread the ball around a lot. They've got 7 players that have caught 10 passes or more this season. Compared to us, we only have 5 players that have caught more than 10 passes. So again, I think our defense has their work cut out for them. They got some playmakers over on that side of the ball. But Bennett, anything for you that you've seen on their offense that we should be thinking about?
Yeah, I think their offense is definitely the strength. I think the thing that's interesting about Gibson specifically too, he's thrown 100 passes now for them this season, only 1 interception. So we're talking about JMU's given up some drives this year, especially the last couple of weeks, and they've been bailed out by some of those really timely turnovers. If Gibson can limit those interceptions, it can definitely be an interesting game. I think the one thing about this game, if you're a JMU fan, that gives you a lot of hope is just the actual spot on the schedule. I think Kurt Signetti and JMU thought the schedule makers screwed them last year. This is consecutive road game number 4 for Georgia State. How does that happen?
Yeah, and they've yet to win a game on the road this season.
4 road games in a row is brutal. The last one at UConn, so a pretty significant amount of travel there from Georgia. That's tough. And then JMU coming off a bye. I had seen a stat from an Action Network reporter that I think since 2019, I think teams are like 7-0 against the spread when they're coming off a bye and the other team has that many consecutive road games. So it is proven to be historically, at least the last 5 years or so, a very difficult spot to be on consecutive road game number 3 or 4. And the other team you're facing has extra rest. So I think for JMU, you're probably going to be feeling pretty fresh. And if you're Georgia State, I don't think you're feeling very fresh at all.
Yeah, that is a fantastic point. I mean, their schedule was front loaded. I don't know if you saw this. They didn't leave Atlanta for the first 5 weeks of the season.
Yeah.
So they had like 4 home games, and they played Georgia State. I mean, not Georgia State, Georgia Tech.
Yes.
Right. So they didn't leave Atlanta. So, I mean, so now they're paying the price. So they probably should have tried to steal a couple of those wins early in the season because this road schedule is pretty rough. But I think for our defense with that offense, we just got to put some pressure up front. I mean, I think our pressure, again, they got this quarterback Gibson. Gibson's a senior. So he's not a young quarterback. He's got some experience. And so it's not like we're just going to throw some blitzes at him. I mean, he's seen a lot of things, but I do think our pressure can get to them up front. On the defensive side of the ball, for them, I got 2 names for you that are going to be key for us on offense against their defense. Yamir Knight and Taylor Thompson. Shout out to Jack Fitzpatrick. But I think both of these guys are going to have a day. I want you guys, I mean, if I'm wrong, Bennett, keep it real, Conlin. I want you to tell me next Monday. I need you to come back on the show. Forget about Jack Fitzpatrick, even if he's available. You are on the show, and I need you to say, Delvin, you lied to me about Yamir Knight and Taylor Thompson having a big game, because I'm telling you, I watched this team play, and there were seam passes and passes over the middle that were open all the time, right? They run some cover 2, middle of the field, wide open. Sometimes they run blitzes, and then they have a single safety high look, and then they have linebackers running after the slot receiver, trying to cover the slot receiver. It ain't happening. So I'm telling you, and by the way, I think they've got some talented linebackers over there. They've got some guys with experience. All their linebackers pretty much are seniors. They got 1 freshman that they rotate in and out, but all of their linebackers, none of them can keep up with Yamir Knight in the slot or Taylor Thompson coming from his tight end position. So those 2 guys are, I promise you, Bennett, they're going to have a day. All right. Now, the other thing that I think plays very well for us, by the way, we talked about Caden Robinson earlier from App State. If you go back and watch that App State game versus Georgia State, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. Caden Robinson's running wide open in the middle of the field the entire game. He caught 5 passes for 121 yards. He absolutely torched them. So I think we can run the ball against them, but I also believe that our passing game, especially that quick intermediate route, and let Yamir Knight, Taylor Thompson run for some yak, I think that's going to be a big deal for us. The other thing that's going to help us is that this team only has 10 sacks. They only got 10 sacks. So they don't really do a great job like some of the other teams that we've seen and like some of the teams that we're going to see in coming weeks, like Old Dominion. When bringing pressure, they don't really get to the quarterback. They don't get to the quarterback without pressure. If they rush just their front four, they don't get to the quarterback. So they've got a couple of D tackles that have 4 sacks each, but that's because they bring pressure and they're running kind of wide open. They're not beating their man one-on-one. So I think a good opportunity for our offense to get right against a pretty mediocre defense. All right.
Yeah.
So
the EPA stats back you up here.
Let's go. Bennett Conlin, the EPA king. That's what I'm talking about. Tell me about the EPA stats.
Their defense, Georgia State's 115th nationally in EPA per pass, 110th in EPA per rush. And I think you'll like this one. And Bob Chesney might really like this one. They're 116th nationally in EPA on early downs, which they've talked about not getting behind the chains. Georgia State is very good at letting you stay in front of the sticks with productive first and second down plays.
Now, does EPA, does it break it down like run play versus pass play in terms of first and second down inefficiency, I guess, for defense?
Let me look. I bet they have that on the full profile.
Yeah, I'm just curious. I'm still trying to figure out this whole EPA thing and PFF and FPB and actually FPB stands for 4-player bond. It's something we used to play at JMU, me and my buddies, James Bond 007 Goldeneye.
It seems like they're bad against both pretty much on most downs, including early downs. Their success rate numbers are also really bad against the pass. They're 123rd nationally, 115th against the run. So they seem to struggle with pretty much all of it defensively, which I think is a good sign if you're JMU. And Barnett, I feel like gets a little bit too much heat. They're talking about he can only make the deep throws, PFF gives him a lot of love on those medium 10 to 19 air yard throws. He's got a 91.7 grade on PFF on those throws. He's 25 of 42, averaging about 10 yards per pass attempt on those. And he's had some tough luck with drops there. Of those 42 passes, 25 have been completed and 8 have been dropped. So his adjusted completion percentage on throws that are traveling 10 to 19 yards is 69%.
Wow.
So he's been pretty good in that area, even though fans are maybe calling him a deep ball merchant at times. So I think if you can get him those intermediate throws against this defense, and hold on to the ball, I think there could be a really nice day for AB3.
I think he's going to have a game. I think it's AB3. I think all of our receivers have a game, but I really think Yamir Knight, Taylor Thompson, that slot and that tight end position with the way that Georgia State may break all their tendencies and run some completely other coverage that they have not shown on film. But from what I saw on film, the seams, the over the middle, the drags, all those plays are wide open with this defense. So overall, I think it should be a good game. I think it's going to be a competitive game. I'm excited that we have our 10th sellout of Bridgeforth Stadium in a row, which means that we're getting closer to Jack Fitzpatrick being on board with Bridgeforth expansion. I think he said that, he's got to see as the new AD at James Madison. Fitzpatrick said that he has to see, some consecutive sellouts before he even considers expansion. And so I think we're getting close to that. So I am fired up about being in the Berg on Saturday. All right, Bennett, keep it real. Conlin, you know what time it is. It is time for What You Talking About, Willis?
The best time of the year. Let me pull up your clip, which has to be somewhere in here.
Yeah, come on. Give me some What You Talking About, Willis, man. I got to get in the mood.
What you talking about? What you talking about? What you talking about? What you talking about, Willis?
All right, so What You Talking About, Willis? This week, So first off, I got to give you a what you talking about, Willis. I was hanging out with a good friend of mine. I think you guys have talked about him on the JMU Sports News podcast. He's the all-time career leader in receptions at James Madison. His name is Ernest Payton.
Yeah.
One of my best friends. He was here in town in Charlotte, so he and I met up today, had some drinks, and we were talking about college football, of course. And of course, the subject of Texas came up. And he said that he thinks Quinn Ewers may come back to Texas next year. He thinks that Arch Manning will transfer to Colorado.
Whoa.
All right. So I got two what you talking about, Willis's tonight. The first one, Ernest Payton. What you talking about, Willis? That is the most craziest asinine thing I think I've ever heard. All right. Now, my real what you talking about, Willis, tonight is this guy, Paul Feinbaum. He's an easy target for me because he says outlandish things about college football all the time. But one of the things he said this week is that Penn State coach James Franklin should be fired. How do you feel about that, Bennett? I'm curious because you keep it real. In fact, some people call you Bennett Keep It Real Conlin.
That's right. I get the frustration from the Penn State fans with the lack of beating Ohio State and Michigan specifically. But I think you got to give him a little time in the 12-team playoff to see if maybe he can make some noise in there, especially not going against Ohio State, which is a hard team to have to beat to sort of appease fans.
Yeah, I agree, man. I mean, listen, the guy's kind of behind the 8 ball because Penn State, when's the last time they won a national championship? Like early 2000s, right? And so, when he took that job 9-10 years ago, he was behind the 8 ball. Ohio State and Michigan were well ahead of him, especially after Penn State was coming off kind of a, scandal-laden era. And so he had to play catch up. And I think, when you look at measuring the success of a coach, and I may sound like a homer because James Franklin was my receivers coach at JMU. When I was there, he was the wide receiver coach. Awesome dude. But when you look at what a college football coach actually means to a program, Penn State right now has a 93% graduation rate. That is the highest in program history. And so, if we want to measure James Franklin by the results on the field, I think they're doing pretty well on the field. They're not struggling to sell out the stadium over there in college at Penn State.
Yeah.
They're also getting bowls. They're making money hand over fist. And when you talk to some of those players at Penn State, they always talk about what James Franklin means to them as a man more than just a college football player. So Paul Feinbaum, what are you talking about, Willis, man? You want to fire this guy? And he's literally, raising young men who are going to be productive members of society and still making a ton of money for Penn State. You got to give him some time. It took Michael Jordan several years before he beat the Pistons. The time is coming. Penn State will overcome Ohio State. And Bennett Conlin, to your point, as you were keeping it real, it may just come in this year's college football playoff because I think they are a contender.
It might. I found your video if you want it now.
No, it's too late, man. It's too late. You messed it up. What you talking about, Willis? All right. So you know what? Because it's so late, let's go ahead and take it to the house. And, Bennett, this time of year, week 10 of the college football season, every team is dealing with injuries. And during this time, we often hear a familiar mantra, next man up. You'll hear coaches say we have a next man up mentality. But that mentality can only exist. It can only be possible when the next man up is actually prepared. When the next man up has worked as if they are the first man up. Now, I want you to take Jameis Winston, for instance, a guy who has caught lots of heat over his time in the NFL, but someone who I consider to be a national treasure. I mean, the guy is both hilarious and serious at the same damn time. Now, when the Cleveland Browns starting quarterback Deshaun Watson went down with a torn Achilles a couple of weeks ago, Jameis was the next man up. And what did he do? He went out and beat the division favorite Baltimore Ravens, and he did it by going 27-41 for 334 yards and 3 touchdowns, including a 38-yarder to win the game. Now, there are some that will say Jameis got lucky, but I've always understood that luck is where preparation meets opportunity. We are often all presented with opportunities. The question is whether we are prepared to take advantage of them. Because when we aren't prepared, they don't really feel like opportunities. In fact, they can feel like burdens. Because when the crap hits the fan, when we're thrown in the fire, when the bullets are live, Bennett, we don't rise to the occasion. We fall to our highest level of training. We sink to the level of our preparedness. You see, lack of confidence is bred in a lack of preparation. And as the next man up, you have to stay prepared, stay ready. Perhaps the most important lesson, though, that Jameis taught us is the importance of brotherhood, the importance of sisterhood, the importance of rooting for and supporting one another, especially the person who occupies the spot that you want. After fans booed Deshaun Watson as he was carted off the field, Jameis Winston, in his post-game interview, talked about how important it was for him to support his brother. You have to believe that if he had any contempt for his teammate, Watson, the first man up, he probably wouldn't have so diligent prepared to be the next man up. He probably wouldn't have had the support and trust and enthusiasm from his teammates as the next man up. Now, we've heard a lot about this JMU team and how they built a brotherhood, how they play the name game, right, Bennett? How they have each other's backs, which means that as the season drags on into these final 4 weeks and the injuries continue to mount, there will undoubtedly be some next men up that will finish the job, maybe also with a little luck. Because as I've always heard it, if you stay ready, you ain't got to get ready. And that's it, JMU Nation. Thank you. We have taken it to the house. I am so fired up about this game this weekend, Bennett. I have no idea, what I'm going to do for the next couple of days while I wait to get to Harrisonburg. Now, are you coming to the Berg?
Jack and I'll both be there.
Let's go.
Yeah.
All right. So I did not know that until this moment. So I am looking forward to that. Maybe we can get some photo ops to the house. I am not going to make you tell everybody how they can find, follow, and subscribe, but I will ask everybody, if you are a fan of this pod, which I've gotten a lot of great feedback. A lot of you have reached out and said that you enjoy the show. Please share it with your friends. Please share it with your JMU alums. Post it on your Facebook pages, all those cool things. And we look forward to bringing you more content. So, Bennett, any closing thoughts before we take it to the house?
No, I'm looking forward to the game. And if you can't be there in person, check it out on ESPN Plus, because Delvin cooked a couple weeks back. First time in the booth. And game 2, everybody says game 1 to game 2, biggest improvement. I'm looking forward to it. Could be one of those post-bye week 70-point performances from him.
I was going to say, man, I am going to cook, man. I am so ready. Now I know I'm ready to go, baby. So let's take it to the house, Bennett. Go Dukes!
To the House is part of the JMU Sports News Network. New episodes of To the House with JMU Hall of Famer Delvin Joyce drop every Monday, and episodes of the JMU Sports News podcast drop in the middle of every week. Subscribe to the JMU Sports News Network wherever you find your podcast and never miss an episode. You can watch every episode of To the House on the JMU Sports News YouTube. Stay updated on social at JMU Sports News and at JMU To the House, and at our website, jmusportsnews.com.